let's spend a little bit of time talking about jumping. It's something that we know in video games from a very long time ago. It's something that is, I don't know, ubiquitous, but at the same time not. Not every game has jumping. You're not safe in assuming you're able to jump in every game. Sometimes you think a game's going to have jump, and it doesn't. Cough, cough, Uncharted, I'm looking at you. But, you know, some games have jumping in it, and they're only there in context-sensitive manners, right? Like, oh, my legs don't work unless I specifically walk up to this golden barred, like, wooden barrel box that's stacked on top of another wooden barrel box. Like, what the hell's up with that? Let's take a moment to talk about jumping.
Yeah, let's, yes.
I want to start with Mario, the classic jump man. You know what I mean? We're just going to talk about like the game mechanic of jumping and sort of, I don't know, different parts of it that we see, but following that, I guess, a little bit along history, right? So starting with Jumpman, starting with Mario, we know jump is a means to like get to another location in that game, right? We know it's a means to interact with objects, right? You use the jump in order to collide with the underside of a question mark block. If you jump on top of that block, you don't get the item, but you have gained a new height, which could potentially get you to a new area if you continue to jump, right? If you hit it from the bottom, then an item comes out on top, right? If an enemy approaches you, you have to jump in order to kill them, like, or defeat them, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
So the behavior of like jumping on top of the question mark block to reach a higher place, that same logic is now similarly being applied to the Goomba or whatever enemy that appears.
Right, it's just that the trigger box, like, that's detecting the jumping is either, you know, it has to either be on it's the bottom of the box and the top of the Goomba's head. But you're saying that it's either way, it's an interact that is triggered only when the character is jumping.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like your main form of interaction is jumping in those original, like, older Mario games. I think even for, like, Super Mario World, right, they had the tutorial blocks, which were still just an extension of blocks you had to jump into from the underside. And then it would pop up a message like, Yoshi can eat apples, and if you press this button, he'll spit out the apple, and that type of thing.
Yeah. I'm always thrown off when a game doesn't have jump, and I know it's a lot of games have opted to use a roll instead of a jump, and you know which serves a similar function of like kind of evading. You know, you're able to evade, let's say, projectiles or something. You know, either with a roll or with a jump. So there are situations where you don't necessarily need both, but jumping does feel like, for me, the most comfortable maneuver, perhaps because so many of the early games involve this Mario style jumping, you know. I mean, it's iconic, you know. It seems to me that when you're walking, right, you're like as Mario, you're moving along the x-axis, right, and then jumping gives you the ability to now have movement along the y-axis, and then when you can combine them, right, you can be running and jump, and then you're kind of moving in. You know, like if we think about it as like a quadrant, right? Or like four quadrants, you know, if you're going right and up, then you're going to be in the first quadrant, right? You're going to be making from the 0, 0 point, you'd be going to the top right, right? And that's how Mario's trajectory, how we can figure out Mario's trajectory. But when you have a roll, you're still moving along the x-axis, right? Right. You know, and maybe like 3D games, right? You might be going along the X and the Z axis, but you're not really moving along the Y axis unless there's like a ladder. In those games, you're not really getting the same kind of verticality, right? You're limited to when you're able to experience verticality, but you want verticality in a side-scrolling platformer, right? Like you don't have the depth. You don't, in a 2D game, you don't have the ability to navigate in the Z axis. So the jump becomes more important in a 2D game. Would you agree?
Yeah, there's no other way to go up.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like, unless you have, you know, trampoline platforms that you just walk into and they send you up, or if you have teleporters, right? You need some device to get you higher on that axis. Yeah. You know, there could potentially be a slope, but then you're still at ground level, more or less, right? Because the ground is actually sloping upward. So sure, yeah, like on a 2D plane, jumping is like far more important than on a 3D plane, but it's also much easier to track as well. Like 3D platformers handling jump in 3D games, not even mentioning first person, like maybe we could talk about that in a bit, but like there's that extra axis that you're now able to go around just makes jumping, let's say, harder to track. And maybe, I'm not saying like if Mario is in 3D and he has the ability to jump, when he jumps, suddenly I'm looking around the screen like, where did he go? Where did he go? It's more so that I now need additional visual data to tell me like, where am I going to land? Where am I in my jump? And part of that is done by the shadow.
I was gonna say, are you going with the
shadow?
Yeah,
like
going
normally
shadow,
you
man?
got a little blob shadow, like a little circular shadow underneath your platformer character, and to help illustrate where you are in the parabolic arc of your jump, right? That shadow goes from like big blob to like little pin drop to now big blob again as you go up, crest, and then back to bottom. So all of that is to say that like while 2D platformers may seem simple because like, oh, we don't need to track this extra stuff, like a lot of it goes into the feel of the jump as well. But when we start getting more dimensions, you know, more, I don't know, higher graphical fidelity, whatever, like we need more ways to communicate important information to the player. And that's probably most on the like adding a new axis, right? Going from a 2D to a 3D game, you need players to know like where they're going to be landing. And that's additionally true for first person platformers of like, now you have to do even more work because you're essentially zooming the camera in more and more as you do this, right? Like you go from like 2D Mario to 3D Mario. Sure, the camera is like, actually in general, I would say the camera is definitely zoomed in more, right? If you were to look at any of the new Super Mario Brother games, or the classic ones, like very zoomed out. It looks like a stage. You know, you see far ahead of you. You maybe see a little bit behind you. You see a bunch above you. If you jump to Mario 64 or Super Mario Odyssey, now it's like, oh, this camera's actually like stuck onto the character. It's maybe like 5 or so meters back, and your visibility is limited by XYZ. Additionally, the orientation of the camera, right? You could put the camera in a spot where it's now extremely difficult to see where you're jumping.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, it seems like that, like those 2 3D games that you mentioned, right, and also Mario Sunshine, they have like a hub world that is easy to navigate, that doesn't require a ton of platforming, or it need not. Like there might be, you can go jump on top of buildings, but you don't need to. There's a street that you can just walk on and you know, so traverse in a way that doesn't require as much jumping as like the 2D games, which don't really have that same analog, right? When you're playing a 2D Mario game, you're going to be jumping all the time, and like it's inescapable.
Yeah, I guess so. You know, that really comes down to the level design side of things, I think. Like with 2D Mario games, like if you put in a pit, right, if you break the ground at any point, it is mandatory for you to jump. In a 3D Mario game, it's opposite. You have to build upward. You have to put a wall. I mean, you can put a pit for sure, but like more often than not, it's going to be a wall that you got to put up, because now that it's 3D, the player, if they see a hole, they could choose to walk around the hole. If you have a wall, sure, if it's just on its own, not connected to anything, yeah, the player could walk around that, right? The idea is like taking Mario Sunshine again as the example. Like if you lead Mario down an alleyway that's now a dead end because there's a bunch of buildings around, you can either turn around and follow the ground and walk back, or you can imply your jump, which kind of extends to the wall jump as well in this case. But you can use your jump to like kick off of things and like get out of that situation. But that maneuver right there is far more complex than what we've been talking about with the basic like jump up once, which is actually something else, like, you know, it's worth talking about, you know, as we're going into this like mechanic overview / breakdown or whatever we want to call it, like focused on jump. You know, people love jumping, and people figured out different ways to jump in video games, right? And it gave us like cool new fun ways to do things. Like in Mario, I don't think there was the wall jump prior to Mario 64. like the wall jump, potentially actually, I think probably a lot of new staples of Mario came out with 64. Like the triple jump that ends in like him doing a triple front flip, at the end, like the 3 jumps getting higher and higher when done in succession. Like, I think all of that came from Mario going into 3D, because in 2D, the jump was simply like, hold the button.
Yeah.
You go as high as you can, and then you start to fall back down, and there's nothing for like comboing the jumps. There's nothing that says, hey, do this special input and like Mario will do this. Exactly, right? Part of all of that came from the addition of the thumbstick and the 3-dimensional mobility, right? Mario, in Odyssey and other games, like I think even as far back as Sunshine, when you took the thumbstick and started spinning Mario into 360-degree circles, and then you hit the A button, he's like, whee! And it's like little helicopter spins around and flies up into the air for a couple seconds and comes back down, right? We would never have gotten that if Mario stayed in a 2-dimensional plane, because you simply do not get to see the character spin around like that. And it's cool that like that opened up his sort of jumping abilities. But additionally, we saw the wall jump, and wall jumps, go into a lot of other games at this point. It's something that's like very fun. It's just extra agility. Double jumping in general is like a really cool boost up from the normal jump. And I guess double jump can kind of have like different connotations to it. When I say double jump, I always imagine a character jumping again from some point in the sky where they, previously jumped, right? But I think a case could be made that like the wall jump may be considered a double jump. But the implication is that you would no longer be able to jump once you have exhausted all the jumps allowed. Like that's usually what I see with double jump.
The reason why wall jumps are often not classified as double jumps is because typically in games that have wall jumping sections, there will be a point in the game where there are 2 walls that are very close to each other, and you will jump between the walls. You'll continue to wall jump until you've gotten to the top. Right, it's very fun. It's satisfying. It's also demonstrating your mastery of the wall jump. And if we're talking about something like, if we use the term double jump, right, we're implying that there is no triple jump, right? So there's a counter for how many jumps you're allowed to take before you run out of the ability to continue jumping, right? With a wall jump, if you're able to wall jump infinitely as long as there is wall, it's not using that counter, right? Or it's resetting that counter every time you hit the wall.
Yeah, they use surfaces as a way to reset our jump counter, which is good. It's basically an extension of like, you have touched the ground, right? Therefore, you should be able to jump again. I like double jumps. I feel like double jumps are super fun. Like there's something in my like animal brain that's like, oh, this person used their legs again to get higher with like not touching anything. Like that's super cool and appealing to me.
Yeah.
Like, I love it, when you're playing like Devil May Cry or something, and like you unlock the double jump and you see Dante just suddenly like is now able to like bounce off of just like a rune, like almost Doctor Strange, like a rune appears in the air under his feet and he pushes himself off of that, and it's like, wow, that's so cool. Or if you're playing Cyberpunk 2077, you get down a tech branch far enough that like you actually gain the ability to double jump. Like somehow they show your calves and they have extra robot calf muscles in them that let you
thrusters
do that.
Or something. That's crazy. Yeah, no,
Right.
I like what you're saying about the skill tree though, because the one of the reasons why I find the double jump fascinating and enjoyable is because you're usually not getting that at the start of the game, right? It's not an ability. It's an ability you have to acquire after you've been jumping. So you become significantly more powerful since so much of the jumping allows you to access so much of the world. You become much more powerful.
Yeah.
In like a Metroidvania, when you acquire double jump, you'll be able to reach new areas that you wouldn't have been able to reach before. So it's getting a new ability, but it's like tied to your like locomotion. So we often don't look at it as like, oh, you got the bow and arrow or you got the boomerang now, so you can do this other thing, but it feels almost like too tied to the character. It's not an accessory, right? It's just like a new ability. But so it kind of like blends in almost, and I can see us not. It doesn't feel as special. It's an innovation on something that you've already done. There's something gratifying about being slightly more powerful than you were before, right? Like that is, there's something exciting about that. Your character doesn't look different, but yet you're going to be able to get the chest now that you've been eyeing up since, your second hour of playing.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you don't always know that the double jump is going to come in, right? Like, that's part of the fun of the reveal, is seeing like, holy shit, I can get up higher. And I think there's something kind of like human primal about that, maybe a little bit of that Icarus in us, where it's just like, we want to go up really high, and anything that allows us to do that would be great. And so like, just either getting the double jump ability or wall jump or something that like allows us to kind of like stay in the air more or do more things is cool. I don't often see a lot of stuff that leans on the double jump, like we talked about, basic jump will like get us to kill Goombas, but it's not like I need to execute a double jump in order to kill a specific enemy. It seems
like it's much more exploration based.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know, like acrobatic,
Yeah, it feels like it's like more for getting to new areas and or just being an extra like style flourish in whatever you're currently doing. Like, Mario unlocked the double jump, but like I don't need the double jump to kill these Goombas. Now, something that's actually kind of cool, I guess, is, in Mario Odyssey, if we take the Tower of Goombas, that definitely like now more so requires a double jump. Right, like that's cool. And in more cases than not, you're trying to possess those Goombas to like complete a goal rather than like take them down, right, in some sort of boss fight. But that would be like a interesting use of a double jump. Potentially using double jump to activate some things somehow. That's not just like, hey, reach this location. Like, like how Splosion Man, right? He would combust in order to jump, and that allowed him to jump potentially like 4 times. Like, it almost felt like Kirby, except without the float, right?
Yeah, there's something like wall jumpy about it. Like, I remember we would play Splosion Man, and like the only way to solve a puzzle, like we would both have to jump into each other and then explode off of each other. So like we have to, like, we basically are activating a double jump, but it is only enabled when our characters are mid-air touching, and then we can explode and then go to the wall, and then explode off the walls, like synchronized swimmers, like we're synchronized jumpers, and then meet in the air and then jump off of each other again. And yeah, I mean, it really requires this coordination of jumping. And again, that's the main mechanic, right? And similar to Mario, the jump is also it does damage in that game. It's not just the trigger box on top of the head, but so the jump is, you're not going to be using any weapons or anything like that in that game. Your options are move and explode.
Yeah, every button is explode, and explode just kicks you into a jump. And they follow the same rules of like, if you touch a surface, then your number of jumps reset, right? Whether that's like sliding on the wall or touching the floor, you get like 4 jumps before your Splosion Man is completely like burnt out, literally has no more like red flare to him, and he needs to touch the floor. So tying this from one jump-based game to another jump-based game, have you heard of the game Jump King?
No, I don't know that.
So this is a game that's like pretty big with like streamers and stuff. One of those very difficult games. The whole game is jumping. Like, the only abilities you have are to walk left and right, hold your jump, like crouch, and then release jump to jump.
Okay.
And I don't know the full intricacies of it. Like, if you hold jump longer, do you jump farther? Like, I do think that is the case, because they have like various points of that you need to jump through. But basically, it's a 2D platforming game. You have to like very well manage your positioning and jumping to make it through screen after screen after screen of a castle, and the game self-explains that there's a babe at the top that you must save, something like that. You're jumping to get the girl. And I bring this game up because it's such a...
Can you retake that without saying babe? I'm sorry.
The game literally says babe.
Oh my gosh, oh gosh, okay.
Hang on, let me make sure.
That feels man.
Literally, yeah,
I
dude.
feel
literally,
really weird about that. It's like
Jump King Babe of Ascension is the title, dude.
Okay. I'll take it back. You know, if it's the title, it's the title.
Tactical
we'll be
leaping adventure, Jump King, there's a smoking hot babe at the top, is a platforming challenge about struggling upwards in search of the legendary smoking hot babe.
Oh, God. I'm sure it's ironic, but, like, it still just doesn't feel very tasteful.
Oh, man.
This is about jumping, though.
It's jumping. So you're jumping around and trying to get to the lady at the top, and I bring it up because it's just like, it's a very pure form of the mechanic we're talking about. Like, there's nothing else around it. There's no double jumping. There's no sliding off the wall. Like, it's just straight jumping. Like, it's like, to me, that's like, it is very much like somebody taking the base principle of Mario's jump, right? Like, I hold the button, I jump higher, or I jump further. And it's just like boiling all that down to like the most essential, like fucking ramen noodles you could have. And then saying like, okay, well now prove to me that you know what this ramen tastes like, and like you can fully, you know, eat every piece of ramen, aka jump all the gaps and make it to the top. Something
you can move left and right. I want to clarify. I'm watching a speed run of it right now, so you can move left and right. Jumping is not literally the only mechanic, but it is the most the most iconic for sure.
Right? You can definitely move around.
It's frog-like. It's like a frog who barely moves left and right because there are not a ton of the platforms don't give you a ton of space. So you're almost always going to just be jumping, you know. I mean, I'd say like probably from what I'm watching, like 90% of the input is jump.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's simply because there's like a lot of challenge around that game. Like, you know, why is it so popular? Like, is it because, you know, the feeling of jumping and making those jumps is so appealing, or is it because this game is actually like on the difficult tier of games? Like, you know, streamers will play this to like get their rage compilation done, like that type of game. Mm-hmm. To me, it seems like it's probably a bit of both. Like, I think, you know, when people are presented with something that's very straightforward and it's like, prove your mastery of it, it makes it kind of more, you know, appealing to be like, oh, all I got to do is hold the jump. The longer I hold the jump button, the further I go. This looks stupidly simple. Let me try it. And then, you know, boom, you die to the first pit or whatever, and you realize, oh, it's not as simple. But you know it's easy enough that you can just like try again. As if the first Goomba killed you, you can just like respawn, jump back on its head again. Except like you don't even really have to worry all that much about the left-right moving. Like, you do have to position yourself for sure, but I would say Mario, you know, uses their horizontal movement way more often and frequently than, say, like a Jump King, which seems to be way more focused on you like judging the jump, getting ready for the jump, and then like executing it, right? And you're thinking about the arc that you're going to be doing and stuff like that. I just wanted to bring it up as like hey, we're talking about jumping. This is the most like hardcore jump focused game that's come out in the last couple of years.
Yeah, before we close out, there's just one thing I want to say going back to double jumping. I think it is absolutely essential that a game, if they have a double jump or a triple jump, have different animations for these different jumps in order to convey, you know, and like telegraph to the player, hey, you have one jump remaining, you know, you have one charge left, you have two charges left, you know, or this is your final jump, you know. And to your point, you know, earlier, there's something about that, the double jump or the, you know, even a triple jump that should make you feel more like that feels more epic than the previous, you know, ability that you had, which was the single or double jump. So the animation should match that as well. Like, it should be signaling to you both that you're out of jumps or nearing the end of your jumps, but also like, dude, look how cool you are.
Yes, exactly. Like that. Going to Mario's triple jump, right? The first jump, his fist is up in the air. He says, yay. Second jump, you see he's a little bit higher. He kind of puts himself in like a missile formation, right? Because his hands are down by his hips. He looks like he's like breaking into the air further, and you're like, whoa, I'm pushing it. What if I do this? Yeah, and then it's like, you know, and like even in the audio design, right? It's like a punch, like ha, and then for the second one, it's like it carries. It's like hoo hoo. He's like, you know, it's like carrying the note before he goes like blah and like does his like triple somersault. Yeah, I don't know. There's just like good build up and reward is what you're talking about for pulling off this maneuver. Like create anticipation. That's like the missile like middle jump and the weird carryover, and then like execute on what happens when you do actually follow that up. Jumping's cool. I like it.
Where would games be without jumping, man?
We wouldn't have Mirror's Edge, and that
Everything
would be a horrible,
Snake.
horrible world.
We'd all be playing Snake all day.